Dolores.
We started. Yeah, moved into a bunch of. other
Katya,
things.
did you press that button? Iona, did you press that button?
Did I press the recording button?
Somebody press start the webinar button.
Ooh,
Or maybe it robotically started on the hour.
I'd like Katya.
Just
Do you know Katya?
Oh, Katya.
Katya, do you know Dolores Davidson? Awesome.
I'm not lying about it. I really do know her.
And I'm not lying either. I really do know her.
Not nearly as interesting as randomly having taken piano lessons with your college roommate.
No, this is so bizarre. I gotta tell you, but what a delightful surprise.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you still play the piano?
No, just Casey.
Casey plays the guitar. He's in a band called Cuddlefish.
Oh,
DG or TT?
I think it's like a play on that. All right, sorry, we should get serious and start up here. Oh, this is what we do. Watch this. Welcome everyone to the fourth panel today. Thanks for your patience. So we've been here for a couple days and we've had some full room with like 75, 80 people the past couple days, but now it's like the hybrid. So far today, we've had actually 40 to 50 people online and, like 15 or 20 people in the room. I think I just did this, but before they were there, raise your hand if you're from California. So raise your hand if you're from a community college in California.
cool.
Raise your hand if you're from a CSU in California. Raise your hand if you're from a UC. So we got some intersegmental representation here.
Very nice.
And we have Katya and Iona online here. So what I would like to do is start off by just sort of explaining what the California Alliance is generally. And then we'll introduce both of our speakers, Lark Park and Dolores Davidson, and they'll talk a little bit about the work that they do and how that relates. And then and then Katya, who's online, can talk about what's happened with her class. And then I want to get to a discussion at the end where we talk about like possibilities for a transfer pathway for data science. I want to motivate this a little bit because we had our associate provost Jennifer Chase here yesterday, and there was a really interesting moment at the end where a colleague from Laney College was like, "Excuse me, none of the students at Laney College know there's data science." He was like, this thing's not popular enough. And Iona and Katya have actually mentioned this too. We're putting like a lot of energy and hustle into making this class and area of study possible, but it's not like as at Berkeley, it blew up. It went crazy. There are, it's one of the biggest majors on the campus right now. But maybe, part of our effort would be to like expand that energy and enthusiasm out to the other sectors. And if we're going to put energy into offering data 8, we better make sure that there's people who want to take it. So one thing I wanted to say towards the end was like, if we make a transfer pathway, that's going to generate the visibility, and people are going to know a lot more that like this is a thing that's really happening at the UC level that they should know about out at the community college level. So that's a little bit of the framing. I would love to just give a little introduction. Here's as I just said, we have Lark Park here today. We have Dolores Davidson, Katya Fuchs, and then, one other thing that we have today is we have a survey of community college students who are at UC Berkeley studying data science. So that can give us some food for talk when we think about what the transfer pathway could be at the end. And plug this in, or maybe so what is the California Alliance really quickly? So we have been meeting in this workshop about data science educators and bringing in people. And a lot of times the people we bring in are community college and CSU educators. And so we decided to make a group and sort of like an affinity group, and we meet throughout the year. So what we did last year was we just put together like what's happening in data science, because nobody really had a map of like, what are the different things? So there was a UC map, a CSU map, and a community college map. And so people were like contributing what was happening at their institution. So sort of like get to know, because these are all fresh programs that have started just the last few years. So we're sort of generating resources there. We have gone out, we had met with Eric Wada, we have met with the AMATIC group. So, trying to like meet groups of educators where they meet or where they might be at and getting to know the process. So we have had a workshop where we also had the community college educators who are already teaching Data 8, sort of workshopping with other educators who are interesting. And that was super great for sort of a peer learning thing where you're like, oh, what did you wish you knew? Or what did you learn by doing it? I think we'll try and do that every year as well. But a lot of this is like documenting, what is the math background? What is articulation process? And we also had a meeting with somebody from UC Office of the President who works on articulation and A to G, and she was really helpful and sort of like get just the lay of the land of what we would need to know there. Another thing that we do, and that's part of my job in this workshop, is the general efforts around support and resources for community colleges. So we do support a bunch of community colleges by making the Jupyter Hub available to them. We do a bunch about like training instructors how to use that and getting the materials out there. So there's part of it that we would be interested to scale. That's like our we have like a few pilot adopters here, but we would love to go, from 5 to 50 if we could get, a bigger effort going. So we have a bunch of different institutions who are whom are here on the call, like that we have been calling informally the board. It's not that formal, but just like people we have been in conversation with and collecting knowledge between. And notably some of the community colleges that have started teaching Data 8 early on. So yeah, we have quarterly meetings with a certain set of folks and sort of plan out like, what should we do next? And what should be some of our future activities? And a bunch of these folks are in the Zoom call right now, and hopefully will be part of the conversation a little bit later. So what happened in this year, we built out the website, we did our map of all the different programs, we had a conversation about math backgrounds at one of the meetings, we talked about what are the elements of Data 8, we also started building out like what are key classes in the sort of intro stat space. So in Berkeley, Data 8 has grown and has become interchangeable with the intro stats class that many majors have, like psychology or a lot of different social sciences have a stat requirement, something like 30 majors. So we made it so that Data 8 could be in place of that. So we started to look at different CSU classes that would be. And so that would be like a longer term project of mapping how data science could play into this, basic stats class. We had a Csu-Wide Workshop in April. That was great to try and get more visibility with more people at the CSU level and sort of like raise, visibility for them to just know what each other are doing. There's a new Cal Poly in Humboldt. And so there's a bunch of people interested there in building data science as part of their move from CSU to Cal Poly. So yeah, here's the list of the different workshops that we've had and conferences that we've attended. So trying to get the word out and keep conversations flowing. I'm gonna just summarize a few things here. We had like we have a winter meeting. UCLA has a new major. UCLA's major is like a different take. It's like it's a pretty intense math major. So instead of being like the giant big tent, it's like an accelerated advanced math major. We have been working with the West Big Data Hub. So they're somebody that just already works on outreach. So they came. And Iona, who's here, talked about a pathway that was created between Skyline and CSU East Bay. So Skyline's one of the first adopters of Data 8. And so could there be a way that somebody takes their first couple of years at Skyline and then ends up at CSU East Bay? And we can call on Iona a little bit later to talk about that as well. And we also had students doing student research projects come and sort of talk about data science research projects that they were doing. So as everything, if you were here the first couple of days, we try and involve the students. This meeting is being run by me. Sometimes the facilitators are students. So we have a lot of like students engaged in sort of building and doing the data science outreach. CSU workshop, we had 33 different CSUs there. So that was great. Just like building that network and building it out. One of the people we have is from the CSU Chancellor's office, and that's interested in sort of doing grants that would be like CSU wide of how to build out efforts. And we are hoping to take the pilot that we are currently doing for community colleges and make that available for CSUs as well. So just remember to talk about that, both you guys. That's built already, so we should play with it. And a lot of those conversations that we had in that meeting about the transfer model curriculum, requirements for DS curriculum, and associates for transfer are the conversations that we want to talk about today. Okay, without further ado, that's my summary of where we are in, and I will link for the CADC website. Yes, I can put that in the chat. But I would like to move on to Lark Park, who will talk about her efforts.
Great, thank you, Eric. It's really nice to be here and nice to see people in person as well as online. And so I'm Lark Park. I'm the director of the California Education Learning Lab, and we are a state-funded higher education grant-making program under the Governor's Office of Planning and Research. My other hat also involved in higher ed is I serve on the University of California Board of Regents. So in terms of the California Education Learning Lab, I wanted to, Eric invited me to talk to you a little bit about the program because we're getting ready to release a grant opportunity in the early fall around data science and thought that would be of interest here. So I want to just, give you some backdrop about the program so you understand sort of where we're coming from. So our mission is to improve learning outcomes and close equity gaps in public higher education. We've mostly focused on STEM areas, but we are branching out. Our goal is to support intersegmental, innovative faculty-led projects. And so again, this audience is exactly the audience we want, which is a combination of UC, CSU, and California community colleges. In addition to grant making, we host a lot of programming to reach faculty more broadly. We hold convenings, webinars. We contract for research briefs. Statutorily, meaning like how we're written into the California statute, is to enhance online and hybrid learning environments, which, we kind of consider almost everything to be a hybrid learning environment at this time, one before, I think. And we really try to think about how students learn in the classroom, both the virtual classroom and the physical classroom. Next slide. Okay, I don't think that's the same slide deck. Yeah. Okay. In any case, one of the things I would say that I want to highlight about our values, because it's sort of an important context to the way we put out our grants, is we operate on the premise that all students are capable learners and that they have potential for success given the right conditions, supports, and motivations. And we really focus on faculty as being, where the rubber meets the road, as being the greatest resource in helping students meet their goals. One slide back, I think that is the slide that you have. So our theory of change is that our activities, and we have an annual budget where we give out millions of dollars of grants every year. Our theory of change is really the activities that we undertake are intended to change or turn the wheel of the larger higher education ecosystem, which is pretty darn big in California. We're, the size isn't proportional because we're a tiny little entity, and higher education is vast, but that's sort of what we want to do, is our turn helps higher education turn. Next slide. So these are just kind of our main areas that we undertake, right, about awarding grants. to enhance innovative approaches to teaching and learning. It's under the umbrella of innovation. We try to bridge theory and practice, and we really do value the research that comes out of the practice field, and so we want our grant projects to continually contribute to the field of human learning. Again, I mentioned community earlier. We can't do this without having a broad-based community of practitioners that talk to each other and spread great ideas and practices. And part of our mission is really to make sure that the educational practices are inclusive and reflect culturally relevant pedagogy, and that equity is a big part of our mission. We want all of this work to infiltrate educational policy at the state level, right? So we're trying to create a really virtuous circle between what is going on the ground, what is being contributed to research, and how state policymakers think of innovation and how they fund. Next slide. So just to give you a sense of what we've done in the past 3.5 years, we've committed about $30 million in funding to public higher education institutions. We have 61 distinct funded projects. We have 85 higher education institutions, the vast majority of which are the publics involved in grant funded projects, and over 300 faculty are we consider as being leaders in these projects. Next slide, Eric. And just this is good to give you an idea that our advisory council pulls from higher education and beyond. So we have representatives here from UC, CSU, community colleges, but also the world beyond. We have Candace Till, who is on the lower right, who is the director of learning engineering at Amazon. And we have Christopher Cabalden, who has been just a long time state policy advocate in higher education. And then Londe Ajose on the top left, who was most recently Governor Newsom's higher education advisor. So we really do have a committed leadership that helps direct our work. So now on to the good part about data science and what we are thinking about. So we're still in I would say, in the middle of really designing a grant opportunity, but in the conversations that we've had with people on the ground, there are such rich opportunities here for grant making, but these are sort of the three threads that we have thought about so far, is really supporting interdisciplinary work, as Eric and others have talked about, I'm sure, which is how data science is applicable to so many other fields, both STEM and non-STEM, and promoting that. Also, we're thinking about how do we create formalized data science pathways that have relevance for students in sort of their educational trajectory and workforce opportunities. And the third one is a little bit of a marriage of the first two, which is how do we create interdisciplinary pathways, understanding the relevance here and understanding the changes that are going on in majors, and a way to really formalize opportunities to integrate data science with humanities and social sciences. So these are the three major threads that we're thinking about in terms of the grant opportunity that we will be releasing. Eric, next slide. Before I touch on this last slide that we have, I do want to say that again, we're still in the middle of like, how do we really shape this? So we don't yet have a target for the number of awards or the amount of awards. We do know that it takes time though. So we anticipate that projects that get awarded will be at least 2, more likely 3+ years in duration. And again, they do have to, these will be expected to be intersegmental projects, and anybody from UC, CSU, community colleges can be the lead on an application. So in terms of these blocks here, again, this is just to illuminate where we are in our thinking about, the why and the what and the how is, our intent is to try to use this funding to promote more clear pathways for students It's to support interdisciplinary and intersegmental collaboration. It's in hopes that there'll be more of an understanding, understanding of and response to industry signals. Where are different industries at in valuing data science knowledge and or credentials? The conversations we've had also, as Eric alluded to, have told us that there's really kind of a differential response depending on which segment you're talking about. But we would like to be able to develop a supportive professional development infrastructure and try to, I would say, optimize a little bit better supply and demand. Because, you know, we hear that, you know, that's a little bumpy at this point. And then, and this is the segue into my friend and colleague Dolores Davison, which is the integration and collaboration with traditional structures. There are formal structures in terms of pathway development and creating course descriptors. And so, how does this new field integrate well and collaborate well with the structures that are already there, meant to really vet and formalize some of these things. So Eric, if that's okay, I'll turn it over to.
That was pretty smooth.
Okay.
Yeah, that's nice and done. I'm impressed. So good afternoon, I'm Dolores Davison. Until 3.5 weeks ago, I was the president of the Statewide Academic Center for California Community Colleges, and I termed out after 12 years on the board and lost like 10 years like of aging. It's been fabulous. Everybody's like, you're not tired anymore, you're so awake. I'm like, yeah. So instead, but I decided rather than just going back to my classroom, which is what I wanted to do, I agreed to take on the position that Eric Wada, who some of you have met with before, previously held as the CID curriculum director at the state level for the Academic Center for California Community Colleges. And so CID, you know, I've been in this role 3.5 weeks, so I know a lot about CID. I've been involved with it from the beginning, but some of the technical details are probably still a little lost on me. So Katya, if you jump in, if there's anything I'm missing, because I know you were doing a bunch of the math ones. So if I miss anything, you can help me out there. And I know you will, because you're really good at that. So if we can show the next slide. So CID is a supernumbering system that was created in 2007. How many of you have 25 or more years in the system?
Wow.
Wow, a bunch of babies, youngsters. So prior, yeah, wow, you would never guess I started at 8, right? Okay. So before there was CID, there were different systems that assisted with articulation and transfer of courses between the community colleges and to the UCs and the CSUs. One of those was called CAN, the Course Articulation Numbering System. And so we used to reference courses as being canned courses, which now takes on a really negative perspective. But back then, if a class was canned, it meant that it would transfer anywhere and would be able to articulate without having anyone look at the syllabi or look at it. It was understood that English 1 here was English 101 here, was English 1A here, but it was the same course. That system ran out of funding and wasn't refunded. The CSU then decided to do what they called the lower division transfer pathway or pattern. And that exclusively focused between CSU and community colleges, where if a CCC student took X number of classes, they were automatically placed in the major. And so if you took 4 history classes, you were automatically a history major and you would transfer in that major. That didn't work out so great because it didn't include general education and it didn't guarantee you acceptance into the system. It just guaranteed what your major would be. And so in 2007, we created CID, which was this supernumbering system that allowed for transfer between the community colleges. In 2010, Senator Padilla, Alex Padilla, passed a bill, SB 1440, which if I get a hotel room that says 1440, I'm like, oh, it's my lucky day. Just kidding. But 2010, Padilla passed SB 1440, which mandated the creation of transfer model curricula between the CSUs and the community colleges, which meant, and initially it called for 3, sociology, psychology, and communication studies. Those were the first 3 that were done. And what it meant was that if you had a degree in communication studies, you had to offer what was called the transfer model curricula, or an associate degree for transfer, that guaranteed admission into the CSU system. Didn't guarantee that the student would be accepted at a particular college or university. Didn't guarantee that the student would be placed in the exact same major. So if you if you took a transfer model curricula ADT in something like sociology, you could theoretically be placed in a women's studies major at a different university. There have been some backs and forths with that. That system has now been in place for 12 years. We have seen a relatively steady increase in the number of students that take an associate degree for transfer. There are 21 of them, I believe now, that exist in the state that allow for transfer directly into the CSU. The faculty that are involved in that, the whole system of that is faculty appointed by their academic senates respectively. So the Community College Academic Senate and the CSU Academic Senate statewide. One of the things that I don't have up here, and it involves the intersegmental curriculum work group and the CID advisory group, is that there also several years ago was the creation of several UC transfer pathways, looking at majors that required more than the 60 units that was mandated for the ADTs. And they looked specifically at chemistry and physics, which I'm engaged to a physicist. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard that 60 units is not sufficient to get a student ready to transfer in physics or engineering or any of those, because most of our STEM majors take their general education in their upper division, and their lower division is about major prep. And that's the reverse of the way the ADTs are set up. So the UC transfer pathways were created to allow students to transfer to a UC campus using a transfer, a tag, a transfer agreement, guarantee. And those have been, that rollout has been rocky. There's been a lot of questioning about the wording that's been used and all that. I mention that because for that particular group, we had a lot of UC faculty involved, but we also had CSU faculty in chemistry and physics, most of whom argued vigorously that there was no way to do a 60-unit degree. And so they were in favor of those particular degrees that would give them transfer agreements with like 66 units, give or take. Yeah, they played a little bit with that because the way that the language from SB 1440 was written, you cannot go over 60 units. The student can take more than 60 units if he, she, they choose to do that. But the degree itself has to be granted in 60 units. And so for some of our high unit majors, there are majors that are never going to fit that pattern. You're never going to be able to do nursing in 60 units as a lower division transfer pathway. Eric?
Would it be germane to ask a question? So we can get to this later, but the transfer associates for math is in here later on, and that's very relevant. So we can talk about it when we're there. I think it's like 5 courses, and it's something like 20 units. But is that because there's 20 other units that are like?
There's 34 other units that are general education.
Okay, so that just wanted to net
Yeah.
it. So it's suppose it's 60 total. There's only 25 that are going to be applied because there's already.
It depends on the major. Some of them have 18, some of them have 25 that are major prep. And then the rest of it is general education and electives.
Okay.
So
let's loop back to that.
Yeah, we'll loop back to that, but and that's the pattern for lower division work at the CSU. This didn't just come out of like space. That's what in the lower division at the CSU, that's what the majority of the students would take prior to reaching junior status. And I know at UC, I took a bunch of lower division history classes and international relations and econ and all that, which depending on which of the majors I ended up being in, because I switched 3 different times because I was a typical UC student in that sense. And I still got out in 3.5 years, which talks about how different the system was back then, and paid $329 at a quarter. But depending on what my major was, those other lower divisions would count for my GE. And so I would be able to manipulate those. And that's what the CI or the associate degrees for transfer do, is that they put those lower division general education requirements in there. CSU has a graduation requirement of oral communications. Virtually all of our CSU transferring students take that in the lower division at the community college because it's less expensive, counts toward general education units, and counts toward the graduation requirement. We're going to see the same thing with the new ethnic studies requirement. Most of our transfer students are going to take that in the lower division at the community college and then transfer those units to wherever they go, whether it's a CSU or UC. So this particular structure has been around for about 15 years now. And we've got some really sort of specific information about it in the upcoming slides. So we do a couple of different things. We have what are called FDRGs, faculty discipline review groups. These are CSU and community college faculty that get together in a specific discipline and dialogue about what is needed for each course. And so for the historians, every history department in the state, regardless of whether you're UC, CSU, or community college, has the American History Survey. What absolutely needs to be taught in that survey for it to be transferable and count toward major prep at a UC or a CSU. And we start with the conversation with the CSU because of the ADTs, but we also engage our UC partners with that conversation as well, because we don't want students to transfer and then have those courses not count for anything except units, which, you know, makes
Okay.
sense. So the FDRGs meet typically every couple of years, once they've had their established transfer model curricula set up. And so for the historians, I was on the original FDRG back in 2011, and we said we need Western Civ, World Civ, US history. Some combination of those have to be taken by any undergraduate majoring in history to be able to transfer to an upper division set of coursework. And then we hammered out, what do you need in each of those courses? How do you do that? We also dialogued extensively about what other lower division courses you need. And this is one of the things that's going to happen with data science is what else would you take that would prepare you to be able to transfer with junior status in this degree pattern? And we couldn't agree. We got into huge arguments about, is Latin America required? You have to take this. I'm a Russianist by training. Nobody needs to know anything about Russia or Ukraine. That's just crazy. Been a really hard year. And so we ended up with those core survey courses, and then the rest of the transfer model curricula is up to the individual colleges. There aren't CID descriptors. There aren't, you know, these are not guaranteed, but in my particular department, we said history of the Middle East, history of Latin America, history of California, any of these could be used, and that's accepted by most of our transfer partners. So the faculty get together and dialogue about this. This isn't something from the statewide Senate saying you must teach these classes. It's not something administrators are telling us. It's the disciplined faculty. And one of the things that I appreciate very much about my friend and colleague Lark is that she's very quick to point out that faculty have to lead these efforts or there will be no buy-in. Because a lot of times we'll be ordered to do something from the legislature and faculty push back because they don't want to be told by somebody who's never stepped foot on a community college campus what you have to teach. Little bit of a soapbox there.
Okay.
So we do also have, you see, the membership of the FDRGs is a certain number. It's 3 faculty from the CSU, 3 faculty from the community colleges. In a lot of cases, we have UC and private, either AICC&U or HBCU partners that are also involved in the dialogues, because a lot of these classes will transfer to them as well. We want to make sure that we know what everybody else is doing. Next slide, Eric. So the descriptors are courses themselves. Western Civ, great example. As of 2022, the start of 2022, we had 57 disciplines that had descriptors.
Wow.
21,000 courses in total. That's not 21,000 individual courses. It's not like 21,000 history courses. It's 21,000 courses statewide in the 57 disciplines that have been part of the CSU or part of the entirety of CID. 15 of those disciplines are career technical education and they don't transfer. And there's some wiggle room in some of them. Like there are CID descriptors in addiction studies. Some of the CSUs accept that if the student is entering the College of Social Work, they'll take one of those classes. So there are some that transfer, but there are certain disciplines. Welding is a great example that generally doesn't transfer. And so those CID descriptors are limited to the community colleges only. But one of the things to keep in mind is that community college students transfer all the time. I mean, there are community college students that don't. There are community college students that are place bound, that they're out at Palo Verde and they can't transfer somewhere else. They can't take a class at another college, or at least they couldn't before COVID and we all went online. But up until 2020, they couldn't take a class anywhere else. But here in the Bay Area, there are 15 community colleges within a 40-mile radius. So you have students taking classes at a variety of different campuses. They may be going for a welding degree and taking classes at 3 different colleges so that they can transfer those courses in between the campuses as they need to, if they're from different districts. The community college system is a very, very huge and difficult one to understand. I've been in it 29 years and I'm still finding stuff out. But there are 115 physical colleges and then a fully online college, which we are not going to talk about because there is no alcohol involved. But the 115 are in every county but one in California. So when you think about the 23 CSUs, and the 9 undergraduate UCs, the community colleges serve between 1.8 and 1.9 million students a year and have over 58,000 faculty. So lots of engagement and involvement with this because there are so many students that we're working with. CID basically transfers between the UCs, or excuse me, between the CCCs and the CSUs. But we also have agreements with a number of the independent colleges and with a number of HBCUs. Those are small. You know, we don't send a ton of students to those communities, but we have tens of thousands of students every year that aren't able to transfer because there isn't the capacity at the UC and the CSU. So we're always looking for other opportunities that aren't for profits. Because the last thing in the world we want is to send a student to somewhere where they get taken for a ride and don't get a degree and can't get a job. And then there's obviously different layers of transfer. There's transfer for just units, there's transfer for general education, there's transfer for major prep. Most of that historically has been done department to department and campus to campus. Every community college has at least one articulation officer that figures this out. That's their full-time job. You know, where will your history of Russia class transfer? Well, for major prep, it'll transfer to Davis because Davis has an undergraduate lower division course in the history of Russia. And my curriculum is based on their curriculum. It'll transfer there. San Jose State did not have that course. And so it will transfer for general education, but it won't transfer for major prep. And so that's the kind of thing that we're trying to solve with the CID descriptors is let's make sure that these transfer for whatever purpose they serve without there being a lot of confusion and a lot of extra work. You can very quickly, this is what the descriptors entail. This is what's negotiated between the faculty from the systems. How many units, whether there's a prerequisite, what the content and the objectives are. Course outlines of record are required in the community colleges. The CSUs and the UCs don't require them, but we do. We also require SLOs for accreditation. CSUs and UCs don't. So there's a lot of dialogue about how those look on the course outlines. Assignments and assessment, tremendously important. Virtually everything in history requires an essay exam. So if you're giving all multiple choice in the history class, it's probably not going to meet the requirements. And then the textbook question, always a fun one. There's a list of representative texts. And we started to update those to include OER. I know that makes you happy. Makes me happy too. So I'm using it.
We're all into OERs
We're
here.
all into OER now. Well, many of us are into OER. That's how Lark and I first met, was working on an OER project. The CID review process, course outlines of record are submitted. There are hired reviewers from both the CSU and the community colleges in the discipline. They go through the course outline of record against the descriptor, make sure that there's enough of a match. They then do this holistic sort of review of the entirety of it. They're not looking for it to be word for word, although some colleges have done that. They just turn in the descriptor word for word. Here's our course outline of record. I'm like, well, I can't say no. But the course outline of record should be a little more expansive. The descriptor is a minimum. That's sort of the floor. This is the basic stuff, what you need for this course to have. And then the faculty who are doing the reviewing decide either this is approved, it's conditionally approved, that there have to be a couple of corrections, the number of units is wrong, that there are no textbooks listed, there needs to be a textbook, something like that. Or it's not approved, and that's that. Most of the time, it's something that just does not meet the descriptor at all. We have when we first started doing this, we had like a lot of humanities courses submitted under history, and they just didn't match up. There were some similarities for sure, but they didn't mesh. So that's just, nope, that's not going to fly. Next slide. Oops, mine didn't go forward. There we go. So this is just about designing the courses and sort of what we do when we're looking at the design. Descriptors are reviewed theoretically every 5 years, again, by the FDRG, that faculty discipline group of reviewers from the CSU and the CCCs. And we really encourage you as you're working on this to, if you do end up working on this, to make sure you're having conversations with articulation officers, because they're the ones that can really direct it. I think I've got one more. And CID matters, obviously, because this is a major portion of how the community colleges are now transferring students and graduating them with a degree. There's tremendous research that demonstrates that students that have a community college degree are substantially more likely to earn higher wages than a student that just has a high school diploma. And a lot of our students that transferred to the CSUs and the UCs don't finish the baccalaureate degree, or it takes them many, many years to finish it. And so having a degree in hand is very beneficial to those students. And so that's a big push of why the associate degrees for transfer and why CID matters. This is why I have a job doing this. Just to give you I found this out a couple of weeks ago and it freaked me out entirely because of the common course numbering legislation that was passed, which I will also be engaged in to a degree, to a certain point, not an actual degree. I said that, I'm like, oh my God, it's not a degree. The community college system as a whole has about 498,000 courses. CID covers 21,000 of those. We are now expected by July 1st, 2024 to have them all have common course numbers. Could be a fun summer. But this is why CID matters and why and the final, and I didn't put a slide in here about it, but I thought we were going to dialogue a little bit more about it. One of the other laws that was passed in 2013 or 14 was SB 440. It was also by Senator Padilla. And that called for us to create what were called areas of emphasis degrees. And those were degrees for transfer that didn't have a ton of students in any one section of or one element of the degree, but had a lot of students total. So the example that I worked on is we created a social justice studies area of emphasis degree, because when these were first created, the CSUs didn't want to work on anything that transferred less than about 300 students a year. It's a lot of work to put one of these degrees together and get the descriptors and bring the discipline faculty together. It takes time and effort. And CSU understandably said, we don't want to do all this work for a degree that we're going to see 7 students a year transfer into the system. That doesn't make sense. And so what we did was, for social justice studies, we looked at anything that would fall under that existed at a CSU campus. And so women's studies, gender studies, sexuality studies, LGBTQ+ studies, ethnic studies, Asian American studies, Arab American studies, Armenian American studies, all of those that had programs, none of which had more than about 100 graduate or 100 transfers a year, but combined, they had something like 700 transfers a year. And so we created an area of emphasis degree for those. one of the conversations that we started having, and part of the reason that I was invited, is that social justice studies degree is probably not going to continue in existence for much longer, because each of those individual ethnic studies, women's studies, LGBTQ studies, they want their own TMC. They don't want to be part of an area of emphasis. They want to be independent. And we're legally required, at least unless we get the legislation changed, to have 4 AOEs. And data science seems like that might be something we could talk about, putting into an area of emphasis at least for a little while, and then eventually having it be its own. So those are some of the conversations we've been having. And I'm sorry, I went over my 10 minutes, but I got
All
to
good
talk
stuff.
to people. It was so
All
exciting.
good stuff. All good stuff. Okay. Katya, if you'd like to come on and tell us about what you've been working on.
Yeah, thanks everyone. So my name is Katya. I can't see you. I'm sorry I'm not there in person. I'm back kind of teaching, so it's hard for me to get there. But I'm from City College of San Francisco. I'm the chair of the math department, and we're one of the colleges that's launched the data science course. And actually, we've also launched a data science degree. So this actually segues pretty nicely from what Dolores was just talking about. So we developed a course in fall 2020. It was Math 108. And I've linked our course outline here. I can also put it in the chat for later, or Eric, maybe you can share it. For any folks who are interested in creating their own, feel free to borrow, plagiarize as much as you want. So it's based very closely on Data 8 at UC Berkeley, but one of the things that we've been thinking about a lot is, we don't have UC Berkeley students, we have community college students. So what are going to be the needs of our students as opposed to the needs of students at UC Berkeley? With that thinking, one thing that we did is we designed the course to be taught by both math and computer science faculty. So this we kind of did to increase the visibility of the class. This has come up a lot. Students don't know where to look for data science. In fact, one problem that we've had is that they don't think to look for it in the math department course offerings. They look for it in the computer science course offerings. And so that's been a little bit of a hiccup. Like, how do we get the word out that this is a class that we offer now when it's a math class? But anyway, it's taught by both math and CS faculty, and we've trained embedded tutors to help support students. One thing that we're doing as part of training to get more faculty on board is we've actually got a little bit of money to pay faculty who are interested in teaching the class and have gone through a little bit of training to offer office hours to students. So they get a sense of what are the sorts of questions that students are asking. And so we're hoping that by doing that, we can bring more faculty on board to be teaching more sections of the class, or at least to have some variability in terms of who teaches at any given semester. We've had some pretty great successes with the course in terms of why students would take it. So community college students really don't have the luxury of taking courses just for fun. They take them because they satisfy requirements, and Dolores was kind of talking about that with the degrees and general education and all of this. And the first hurdle that we cleared was that Math 108 was approved for Data 8 articulation to UC Berkeley. This happened last year, and that means that students who take Math 108 at City College, if they transfer to UC Berkeley, it counts the same as Data 8. So campus to campus articulation is something that we're working on. We have one, I believe, with CSU East Bay in the works, and we're trying to rack up more with other UCs. So the longer we can get this list of articulations, the better. In terms of offering the course and the successes, so we've been offering the course since fall of 2021. We had 3 sections in 2021 and spring 2022. the bittersweet, kind of like it was a double-edged sword. The good part is we've only ever offered this course in person. So students have had like a really hands-on experience. They've been in the classroom working with the instructor. And they're like, the stories from students have been really amazing. They're stunned by the amount that they can learn and how quickly they can learn it. They're passionate about what they learn and how they can apply it. So that's been the good news. Because it's been offered in person, another bit of silver lining is that with COVID restrictions, we've had to significantly lower the caps on enrollment because we had social distancing in place through last academic year. And that's allowed us to have the classes go even though enrollments were low. And that's been a saving grace because enrollments have been low. We are, I mean, so far we have not run this class with more than 20 students enrolled. Partly because of the COVID social distancing limitations, but partly because there weren't 20 students who wanted to take any one section. We are scheduled to offer 2 sections for fall of 2022. And now the COVID social distancing restrictions are lifted. So caps are back up to 35, which is the standard cap. And that's a little scary because it means that if we don't hit certain enrollment markers, the class will end up getting canceled. However, we thought a lot about kind of who are the students who are taking these classes. And I think Eric mentioned we'll be talking about that a little bit in future slides. And we based when and where we offered the sections on our thinking about who these students are. So like, for example, we're offering one of the sections in the evening at the Mission campus. We have a campus in the Mission district of San Francisco, figuring that maybe high school kids would be interested in taking it after school, or folks who are working would be interested in taking it to sort of increase their career prospects after their work shifts. And that has actually paid off. Enrollment is pretty good, especially considering that enrollment is very, very, very bad in general. These are 2 of the sections that are filling up the fastest. So that's promising. They're not full, but it looks like they're both going to go for the fall semester. So we're excited about that. I mentioned earlier that we are looking at, training faculty and getting more faculty on board. So to develop a sort of a training module, a training course, we use some strong workforce funding. And starting in the fall semester, we actually have a tiny bit of money from just our college U fund. So our college has agreed to invest a little bit of money from its unrestricted fund to pay for a faculty data science coordinator. So that's going to be somebody who hopefully supports other faculty who are interested in teaching the course. They have a little bit of teaching release time. And that's something that's been constantly on our mind, is how do we train folks who are like math faculty or even computer science faculty, but I'm the math chair, so I kind of worry more about the math people. How do we train like math faculty to feel comfortable teaching a data science course, right? There's more programming there than most of us have ever taught, and so on. So hopefully we're going to be able to grow that faculty coordinator position. Right now, it's just a 10% release. So for those of you who are in community college, that might mean more to you than others, but it basically means that somebody only has to teach 90% of their required contractual load, and they can do 10% on this work, and part of their pay, part of their pay is allocated to doing this work. The last 2 are kind of the biggest bits of news. So again, very much in keeping, like in line with what Dolores was just talking about, we were really keen on developing a data science associate's degree. And because there is no data science AST, there is no data science associate's degree for transfer like there is in math or computer science, this is a local associate's degree. But we have written it and it's been approved. It's gone through our local curriculum process. And I also linked it up here to give a really quick overview, it's just sort of the marriage between our math associate's degree and our computer science associate's degree with one. So if you would scroll down a little bit, one thing that makes it different is this domain emphasis on the bottom. So yeah, so students, so you can see, students are taking some programming, either in C++ or in Java. They can choose which. So they're doing some programming, they're doing data structures, they're doing a pretty heavy math load. They've got, there's the foundations of data science. They've got calculus 1 and 2 and linear algebra. And then in addition to that, they have to choose a domain emphasis course that would be theoretically sort of an application of the skills that they learned in their data science class. So all of these courses are courses where there's at least a little bit of computation. And we hope that as time goes, and you can see it's a whole variety of disciplines. So regardless of what the students' interests might be, they could be kind of social sciences oriented. They could be passionate about things like sociology. They could be into finance. They could be into, more computer science. We've got a domain emphasis course that they can take. So, so that is something that's unique. It is something that's distinctly different from math or computer science. And then we have this recommendation for a comm studies course, because that's one of the things that we felt was really important for students, is that they have some comm studies experience going into data science because of the amount of teamwork that field requires, but we didn't make it required. And incidentally, again, kind of in line with what Dolores was saying, right, the degree itself is only 27 to 31 units. So it's not the full, it's not like, well, that's a pretty unit intensive degree as degrees go, but it's not more unit intensive, for example, than math. So students would also need to be taking their general education requirements, right? And so that's the last thing on my bullet point list here, which is that Math 108, our new data science course, up until now, it hasn't satisfied any requirements for students in except for being a transfer level math course and the articulation to data 8. So it didn't satisfy any general education requirements. It didn't satisfy any IGETC. And we just got the news, like, I don't know, a week and a half ago, that it has been cleared to satisfy general education area B4 for CSU, and IGETC area 2A. So the B4, that's again CSU, and IGETC is the UC version of basically the same thing. So
can I ask a totally naive question?
Yeah.
So then can, like any other community college, say, well, Katya got it approved?
Yes, in theory.
So in theory, yes. In practice, not exactly, because we did get denied.
Because Denise got it approved and you
right.
tried to use that logic.
Yes. So Denise got it approved.
Sorry, Denise is Skyline College.
Yeah, Denise is from Skyline College, and her course got approved for B4, but when ours from City College, and I think Peralta, but I could be wrong, maybe it's not Peralta, but one other district also submitted for B4 and they were also denied. And we tried to appeal the decision, pointing to the Skyline course, and we were told, no, the way that their course is written is fundamentally different from the way your course is written. They're not the same course. We're not going to grant you approval just because we granted them approval. However, going back to what I said earlier, feel free to plagiarize. That's why the good Lord gave you eyes. Like, take our outline and adapt it however is appropriate for your college, but feel free to use anything that you feel works for you.
Yeah, I think we should operate on the assumption that it's possible, and in the future we'll be like, here's the approvals for these 3 classes, and it will gather gravity and momentum.
Well,
Yeah, and one of the things that we were told when we tried the whole appeal thing was the Denise's course at Skyline had a lot more, it was a lot more statistics heavy. And in fact, when we compared for our revision, like she did put a lot of the statistics content front and center. So the way she organized her outline really made it feel like a statistics course where the statistics was being taught through a data science lens. And
Got it.
we had written it much more from a technical data science standpoint. And so that's why they said they declined it, that this is not a quantitative reasoning course. This is a technical data science course. And so it's
that's a
about how
lesson
you
learned.
structure the outline. So yeah, so now what we're waiting on is CID. So we have filed for CID Math 110, which is the statistics CID. What my articulation officer has told me is that CID can take years. Our statistics class that's taught in the psych department applied for CID Math 110 in fall of 2019, and they still haven't heard back.
I'm working on it. I'm working on it. I've been on the job for 3 weeks.
That was
Katya.
that was so subtle, Katya.
No, it's well, okay, fine. Dolores, hello. But anyway, so I don't know when we're going to hear back about CID, but the nice thing about if we hear back about CID, for example, if we are approved for CID Math 110, any course that uses, any degree that has CID Math 110 as part of its template can now have Math 108 in it. As opposed to now when it's only courses that have CID Math 110. So hoping to hear about that relatively soon. Who knows, maybe we'll get it, maybe we won't. It's been a long slog, as you guys can see. This has all been kind of 3 years in the making, but we're excited. Our associate's degree is set to launch in spring of 23. It's been approved. And hopefully if the AST template for data science gets written in, in the next however many years, we can just kind of morph our local associate's degree into an AST.
Thank
And I
you
think
so
that's
much.
it.
It's
Yeah,
so
thank
great.
you.
And I really want to believe that all this hard work that you're doing is gonna like have so much leverage for like the next people and the next people and the next people. And I really want to believe that. Sean from Miracosta, did you want to say something?
Yeah, Katya, you said your Math 108 outline, the course outline is available publicly?
Yeah, so I linked it here. So there's our course outline. Yeah. Oh, you know what? I think I linked the historical version. This is the one that got denied, I think. Let me,
use that.
sorry, I'll change, I'll fix the link.
All the repositories will be up to date all the time.
Don't plagiarize this. Yeah, but I'll make it available.
Yeah,
I'll
we'll
put
share
it in
this
the chat.
whole slide deck for on the workshop website. Okay, I'd like to just move on if it's a, sorry? John De Niro.
Comment is that if this course is articulated with data 8, that means it will fulfill the statistics requirements for many different majors at university if you end up at university.
Yes.
I wonder if that's a way to encourage students to take this course, because this information may not be known at all to the students that are considering transfer to university for something other than data science.
Psychology and sociology, and yeah. I think Katya, you mentioned that a little bit, was like advertising the data 8 articulation. Did you hear what Professor De Niro said?
I couldn't hear,
All
unfortunately.
right, so what he was saying was that if it's articulated with data 8, then it will work for like 30 different majors as a prereq, and so that would help drive demand as their statistics requirement lowered it for all these other majors. Public health is required, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, we have been trying to get the word out, and folks are always asking me, does it meet does it satisfy general education? Does it have CID? And so yes, the fact that it's approved for data 8 is awesome. And the fact that it's racking up these other things is also really important.
Okay, thank you. Question about Math 108 being 5 units or 4 units?
Math 108 is 5 units. Most of our math courses at City College are 5. A lot of other colleges, the same courses are 4 units. So you could make a decision locally in terms of what makes sense for you. Ours is 5.
Is that okay?
Yes, one last one.
Yeah, Sean.
If you, for math 108, do folks use data hub or do you have a student download all the software for the they need for data?
They use a 2i2c hub that we're supporting as part of a pilot. That we could do for you. So I wanted to share some information that we gathered, some primary data. So one thing that came up for me was, wait a second, there's 1,000 people in the major at UC Berkeley. It's the 3rd biggest major, is that right? Something like that. By graduates. So, and then I found out there was like something like 200 transfer students in the major already. So I thought, like, wow, like we need this information because regardless of what we're all trying to do, the students are already doing this, right? So isn't that information? So we ran a little mini survey. So we got 53 responses out of 135 people in the major. There is this interesting statistics too, that this year there's 75 incoming transfers. So a lot of the transfers that I'm going to show you the data of are people that came, you know, potentially intending something else and found data science. But this 75 people incoming transfer into data science, that's a whole new wave that's coming next. So that's also really interesting. But I will say that the data I'm going to show you is mostly people who came for other majors. What have they taken as a prereq? So this is related to our transfer pathway stuff. Almost everybody's taken calculus 1, 2, and linear algebra, but you know, 2/3 of them had taken discrete math. And then I need to get rid of this. Who's taken, you know, half of the students had taken a 61B equivalent, and something like 17 had taken a 61A equivalent. So not the majority have taken the CS lower divs, but a bunch of them have. And then engineering 7 is another class that's available. Did you transfer with a transfer degree? So 40% had come with a transfer degree in math. Some 10% had CS and math, and 6% had CS. So a majority, if you add those up, is some combination of math and CS as the 2 existing transfer pathways. 30% didn't have a transfer degree, and there's some other transfer degrees for 10%. So some people do have double transfer degrees, which I didn't know. People at Berkeley are like compulsive double majorers, but I just found out that community college students are also double majorers.
Because any community college that has a local degree in a subject where there is an associate degree for transfer available has to offer the ADT.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of students that take the degree in math and the ADT in math. So they're transferring with 2 degrees, and transfer degree with a capital T would reference an ADT, but even my own counselors sometimes refer to our local degrees as transfer degrees because nobody's going to major in women's studies for fun to hang around. They're transferring in that area, but we don't have an ADT in that. So they reference it as a transfer degree. So I'm wondering if they
could be my problem.
Knew the difference.
Yeah,
When that question was asked, because I think most students,
many
students might think that any degree that got them into a college was a transfer degree.
Yeah.
Computer science department, all the students taking all the math courses, all the physics courses, all chemistry courses. In addition to, so when they get to, we don't have a AD yet. Computer science.
That's the units thing, yeah.
But they can satisfy all of them at the same
Mhm.
If they take it over,
Right.
they can come in.
The difference between a transfer degree in sociology and a transfer degree in psychology is 2 classes.
Right.
Why would they not take both degrees if they could? We have students graduating. Our commencement was just Friday, so it's like clear in my brain. But we had students that graduated with 7 degrees
There you go.
because they're all within
A couple more
a couple more
classes.
classes. And heck, why not? I have to stay an extra quarter. I might as well get 2 more degrees. So yeah, that's super interesting though.
That was very helpful. We go back to that 10% that they have most week, that's very helpful because we don't have ADT in data science, we don't have a specific in data science.
Mhm.
So what I have private students who are aiming for experience in data science program, but then when you're going around it, you're like, okay, there's lower level courses that you can't take in our class, so taking all of them.
But you could also look at this data and say, tell them to do the math AST.
Well, and that's one of the big arguments in STEM is that for a lot of our STEM students, the ADT really technically only gets them into CSU. They don't want to go to CSU. They want to go to UC.
Yeah.
So they're not going to take a degree. They're just going to transfer.
Okay.
And that particular division, because we have PSME, that was the smallest graduating division with number of students in it of any of the divisions at our campus, because they're just all transferring. They're not going to take a degree. So that's super interesting that so many of them, that surprises me that so
Okay.
many of them have a degree. That's
Well, let's
cool.
not get so
Sorry,
hung up on this data
Andy.
too, because this is like us informally just
135 students.
asking. This is 50 students.
Oh, okay.
Of 135,
Of
50
135.
answered in summer.
Oh,
So this is a particularly interesting one for us too, is we've been talking about data 8 and data 6 and accessibility, and having ever seen Python before is definitely part of like succeeding. So this was interesting to see that just under half of the students had seen Python before. It's relatively less common to have Python in community college and more common to have Java or C++. But some students are, maybe they're learning it online. This doesn't say what did you take a class. This is just like, did you have some familiarity? But obviously we know that Java, it's more common that the data structures class in Java is taught at community colleges. Have you taken a stats class before transferring? Only 15 students. So like about a third of the students had taken a stats class. So that's sort of interesting. Intended major. So the biggest intended major is computer science, then math, then economics, then stats. So most of these people are coming, this is for students who are not intending data science. So this is like the other majors where people are coming from. Right, very few. Yeah, this is most of the people here coming from these other affiliated or aligned majors where the prereqs would have been useful. Did you know about data science before transferring to UC Berkeley? No, 55%. So this is related to our conversation yesterday and our conversation today. Like, it's trickling out there. In a few years, it'll be normal, but these people had started their transfer process a while ago. And then this is interesting to us internally. If you're a transfer student and you've come to UC Berkeley, have you taken advantage of any of these services? And so, little advertisement for DSUS is we have an advisor, Amanda Dillon, who's really passionate about this and has started a class specifically to support transfer students. It's a great cohort. They're amazing people. I think it's being offered for the 3rd time. So there is like a specific like launch into the major, but we also have data scholars, CS mentors, CS scholars. So a few people have done multiple of these sources. So this is like of interest to us internally, like how do we support people and make sure that they thrive and succeed once they're in our major? We also asked, and I'm sorry that he's not here, Justin from UC San Diego, but Suraj is here from UC San Diego. A smaller number, they said they have 52 transfers out of 900 majors. Most of the students are from the community colleges in the Southern California area. 2 of the students are from CSUs and 7 are from larger schools. So if we subtract 9 out, that's something like 40 something transfers out of 900. Math background, almost all of them, most of them have taken linear algebra at the prior institutions, and almost everybody had taken calculus 3 at community college. So pretty intensive, STEM preparation for getting into San Diego DS major. But we could all iterate on this and potentially, you know, think about how to get more of this information. This was just like our first quick take on this, just to inform our efforts. This was prior programming coursework. Again, this one is different. This is more C and C++ than Java. I think the other one had them broken out, so now they're combined. So at least half had seen C and C++, and less had seen Python. Okay, so I think we could take this to what would a pathway or an associates for transfer look like for data science. And this is the one for math, just to think about, like, this is where a lot of the most common thing that students are coming from. And Katya we just looked at Katya, so that was also helpful. But this is the AST in math. It has calculus 1, 2, and multivariate calculus, what I'm going to guess is math 3. And then it has linear algebra. And then they have select from one of the following: physics or 2 different versions of the stat class. So that's 20 units. And you were saying like there's 30 other units that are like the other things that you need to take. So these students are apparently succeeding in transferring into the major.
And can I throw an additional wrench in?
Go.
It's not really a wrench. More legislation on the community colleges and the CSUs requires us to create a single general education transfer pathway that has to be in place by 2025, and it's capped at 34 units, where IGETC was 34 or 37 for IGETC for STEM. That goes away. Well, they can keep it, but they can't use it for transfer. And the CSU general education pattern was 39, which means that there will be some more wiggle room with the ADTs, because the total number of general education units is going to drop by 5 units by 2025.
Okay.
Yeah, it's coming. If you haven't seen it and you're interested, it's on asccc.org's webpage on the front page. You can check it out there. The pilot, or not pilot, the proposed plan.
I'd love to jump back to the transfer pathway sort of vision for data science, which I would like this group to take on this coming year. And I want to take it to John De Niro gave an overview of our undergraduate program yesterday morning. So, you know, the most important things lowerdive in data science at UC Berkeley are calculus, linear algebra, and then there's 2 computer science classes. And as I said, this data structures class is more commonly available at community colleges, as far as we understand. And the computational class is less common. So one thing, just, you know, when we're making a transfer pathway for data science with only sets of classes that are available at some community colleges. So that's sort of, I mean, that must happen all the time. Like there's only some, and I know that even within our community colleges districts, there's some community colleges that have more STEM and others that have more career or, you know, social science and stuff like that. I think that most community colleges probably, or, you know, most districts have a statistics and probability class, because we know that, and we know people need that for majors, and we know that that's, you know, the Math 110 class. And the Math 108 class, we know that there's like 5, 6 places that are teaching it, but we're hoping to like keep going with you know, that Data 8 class going forward. So some of this is like how much our class is interchangeable, or how much is like make a pathway that has the vision that the classes will exist potentially in the future, like a future version class. If possible, I know we're sort of at the wrapping up here. I'd like to bring the people on the Zoom call in, and Hunter has his hand up. Hunter Glantz from Cal Poly.
Thank you. The first thing I wanted to mention that I wasn't clear on actually until like an hour ago, that math AST that we just saw on the slide is N associate's degree. It's not, there isn't maybe a universal one. So this can vary from school to school. But I thought it would be a good thing to look at for this discussion. but I guess what I wanted to raise my hand about and ask maybe Dolores or whoever else can chime in about is the idea that that you're talking about, Eric, that this is a priority of ours, this building this transfer pathway. And Katya about an hour ago shared the link to this template website, which I'll put in the chat too, which has the templates for approved transfer model curriculum.
Right.
And I don't want to put maybe the cart in front of the horse too much here, but what I wanted to ask Dolores or anybody who knew was who do we work with to develop a template for a transfer model curriculum in data science? If all of the community colleges or other people who build associate transfer degrees build off this template, then this feels like a good target or a good thing to have in mind.
So the template itself, like the physical template, comes from the California Community College's Chancellor's Office.
Okay.
They're the ones that hold the templates. The creation of what courses you would want in the transfer model curricula would be the faculty discipline review group. So that would be the convening of faculty from the CSU and the community college side. They would meet, they would determine what they thought the most sense would make in terms of these are what we should do. Then it would be vetted out to the field. And for something like data science, it probably would go out to the listservs for computer science, for math, for, you know, whatever other fields you thought would make sense, people could weigh in. For our CSU partners, their Senate does that. We do it, the Academic Senate does it for the community colleges. The UC Academic Senate can also send things out to the various listservs and do it that way. And then once it's vetted in the field, then it goes through the process of being sent to the Chancellor's Office for the California Community Colleges. They approve templates twice a year, or structures twice a year, usually in February and then September. I think they publish updated ones and new ones. So you would get into that cycle of when that was going to occur. I know that the current ethnic studies ones that are being worked on by the faculty discipline review groups will not be available until at least February of 2023, because it does take some time to do the vetting and make sure you hear from everyone. And then it takes time to negotiate those transfer pathways and which, just looking at what Eric put up with the computing and the fact that there are only a few of these available at certain community colleges, the UC transfer pathways in several disciplines right now, philosophy is one I know really well, has a class that is part of the UC transfer pathway that is only offered at 4 community colleges.
Yeah.
That's nonsensical, because it means that a student can't complete that transfer pathway unless they are fortunate enough to attend one of those colleges. And most of our philosophy faculty do not believe those courses can be taught online, and certainly not epistemology. So they did it in emergency situations during COVID, but they're insisting it's in person. So those are the kind of dialogues that you would have to have with all of the UC faculty in those areas, as well as
To
community
agree
college
on that
faculty
pathway.
about, like, is this something we could accept as an upper division, or it's a lower division class, but we recognize that it's not offered at community colleges. So we'll have it as a requirement when they come in, when they transfer into the UC, that you have to take this before you can move forward with the other computer programming classes or structural classes or whatever. The UCs have a lot more freedom to do that than the CSUs do, because they don't have the same unit requirements, they don't have the same caps that are legislated. So you could do something like that. But if we're going to do an ADT,
Yeah.
then we need to make sure that it works somehow. So
Yeah, I mean, there's some that's like just harmonizing what the UC transfer pathway and the ADT, and they're not exactly the same thing, but we want to make
Make them
things
as
that
close.
play well together.
yeah.
If possible, I want to there's 2 other people on the call, Iona and Solomon, and I just want to call on them really quick if they have anything to share.
I was just going to point out, Hunter, if you wanted the post in the chat to go to everybody. I just noticed that when we were posting, it was going to host and panelists.
Oh,
So
I'm sorry, I haven't been in the chat.
Oh, that's my bad. Thank
Yeah.
you, Iona.
So I had just two things to add. You know, the way that we have been approaching this transfer has been very local. And, you know, like Katya mentioned, we are hoping to have it with City College of San Francisco. We have this deal with Skyline. And the goal is to actually go to these campuses or hold an event in fall to advertise, because there are a lot of students who've never heard about data science. So I would say eSpace approach has been just to kind of stay local. And so this alliance has been great for that, because it gives you that platform to reach out. I do want to plug it that this platform has helped the dean realize how important data science is. So there is now a push to actually have a data science degree on our campus. So thank you, Eric. And I think that's a common thing happening across lots of universities right now. So people, you know, I feel like at a CSU, if you're going to invest a lot in all these transfer agreements, it's kind of nice to see how data science is going to evolve on our campus before you kind of do all that groundwork, and then you have to like change things and so on. So those were my two things.
Thank you. Solomon.
Sure. Hello, everybody. Solomon Russell from El Camino College. Yeah, it was. This has been great hearing some of the great work that's been done at other community colleges and at CSUs and UCs. At El Camino College, as I think about where we're moving, what we're moving into, I'm thinking about transfer agreements for CSUs and UCs, but then also recognizing that there's a large number of high school students that are starting to be introduced to data science through a lot of work that's been done at the high school level with AP Computer Science principles, and then also new classes like Intro to Data Science. That's been a course that a lot of high school students have taken here in the Los Angeles area.
Yep.
So that's one thing that I'm starting to think about, of how can we offer this course as dual enrollment, or make it available. And I keep getting asked questions from some of the people that I know of, if this course could be available over summer. And maybe that's a way of being able to swell numbers. And then the other thing that I think that Katya definitely spoke about was numbers and advertising. And a lot of people have talked about this, especially at community college. And we just applied for strong workforce funding specifically for advertising, of making videos, of being able to meet people where they are, and just advertise this, because there are a lot of people that go to boot camps that spend thousands of dollars to get some data science background, that maybe have degrees already. So how can we tap into those things? So those are some of the things I'm thinking about, but I'm really happy to be a part of this community, because I've learned so much, and I see big things coming.
Awesome. Thank you, Solomon.
I was gonna want to say this, that there's enrollment students, and maybe that may not be transferred. So from what I heard, statistics emphasize a lot, and some students may not care for that to be indicative, for them to try to join this whatever we design. And from what I heard, time again, the emphasis is not on statistics, how we could have a minimum amount of statistics, but be subject to data science. How do we, I'm having a hard time trying to understand. Make the way we go to line, how much statistics is needed.
There's commentary in the back about statistics, but maybe people don't want to do statistics. It's not as exciting. And how do we make something exciting about data science that has some statistics, but how much statistics is enough statistics? I don't know if there's quite an answer. It's sort of like a commentary on how do we.
I heard is the Congress behind one of the.
Oh, they declined one of the applications because it didn't sound statsy enough. Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
One of the things that you mentioned, yeah, of course, from a very deep mathematical theory aspect. But if you use that functional formula without any context, without any meaning, and you know, from that, but approach it through the reform in the statistical education and bring
Data first,
activity-
visualize first.
bring more energy forward where they can actually click couple to the relationship. You can bring data, that they can relate, you can bring context that emotionally, culturally is relevant to them. Not only they will love it, they will act it.
Commentary here referencing gaze to, I don't know if you guys can hear it online, but it's sort of like referencing that statistics can be taught in a fun, exciting, visualize, engage, you know, socially relevant context, and it doesn't need to be boring mathematical proofs. And I think what we're talking about is we want to get the high school kids in there. We need to make it like exciting and stimulating and not boring and mathematical. And so
Perhaps the same way from a very traditional assessment where you give them, in all due respect, paper exams and have them write things on the paper. That would do them also, but bringing projects that they can create that stuff and they take ownership of the many use transformation in their path.
creative projects instead of paper-based exams makes things more fun. Solomon, did you just raise your hand?
Yeah, one thing that was really important that I wanted to mention as well is I'm talking about the synergy with Lark Park being there from the California Educational Learning Lab of how that has helped our data science program, because we have actually had a grant where we partnered with UC Berkeley and also CSU Long Beach to create randomized questions, so that students, as they're taking data science, some data science classes and coursework, we've actually been able to build a system so that we can have them take questions over and over and over again. So this is really an area that we found that we can do some pretty innovative things. And I think that's a great thing about data science. So just a plug for Cell.
Yay, Prairie Learn, right?
Yeah.
Prairie Learn for Data 8, another project. He's like, who hasn't talked? Wait, Jamal was gonna say something. Briefly.
First of all, I really appreciate what you guys doing. You don't know how much of this is helping community college as you making things standard. Data day, you're talking about CID, you're talking about, and basically a template of something that we can all follow. I agree on it. That helps a lot. You know, I go create a course and then you see you doesn't like it, and you have to add it, change it. And people doesn't like it. There's a lot of work behind the scenes. And our computer science students right now are taking the 90 minutes to do that. A lot of students are, we have a lot of diversity. The question that I have from Solomon is they teaching the data science two instructors, one from statistics, one from computer science. I went and talked to my sister. My team said we cannot do that because computer science has to be on computer science faculty. This is math, faculty math, faculty sport. How do you guys handle that? Is it local cost only or is it what?
I don't think you hear the question. What's that? How do I sum it up? Katya, can you hear us?
Okay, so the question.
I struggle to hear the questions that come from the back. So if you could give me a quick summary, I'd appreciate it.
Question is that you guys teach the data with two instructors, one from math, one from computer science. My team doesn't let me do that. Is that a local thing or did you have to do something to be able to do that?
How do you get a class that either CS or math can teach the same class? That seems institutionally exciting that you figured that out.
Oh, it wasn't very exciting at all. There in the process of creating a course outline, there's like a little place that I can find exactly what it was, but it was extremely forgettable that you can indicate what departments faculty have.
More exciting in that you got buy-in like between the departments that would happen.
Oh, well, that has been like a 3-year process, and it's been a little bit like pulling teeth sometimes. So, you know, we have a partnership with CS that we formed in the fall of 2019, but like the buy-in has been variable. It hasn't always been the same level. There's been way more interest from math faculty to do this than there has been from CS faculty. So I don't know how you navigate that particular part of it. My only advice is be a little bit relentless. Like, if this is something you want to have happen, include the folks that you want to be a part of the conversation in the conversations, and don't stop including them. But it's not easy. In terms of making it possible for CS faculty to teach the class, that's trivial. There's like a place in the outline where you say that. In terms of getting CS faculty who want to teach it, you just have to be relentless. I don't have like a recipe that works. You just have to keep at it.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Well, I think we should wrap up. Thank everybody for your patience and your participation, and to be continued. And thanks for coming down. We had 2 people who drove to meet us here. And we will look forward to hearing more when that grant proposal gets released in another couple months.
Yes, absolutely. You all will be the first to hear.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining online as well.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.